Before fame, Jim Carrey received a check for $10 million. That didn't exist. He wrote it to himself. For acting services rendered, he post-dated it 5 years, then folded it and kept it in his wallet as a promise between who he was and who he was becoming. Why? Because Jim wasn't chasing applause. He was chasing belief in himself, in his vision, in something the world still laughed at. And here's the truth most people ignore. The world doesn't give you confidence. It reflects what you already carry. And if you wait to be validated before you act, you'll never do anything worth validating. In this video, you'll discover how Jim Carrey went from being broke, rejected, and seen as too much, to becoming the highest paid actor in the world, not by hiding who he was, but by doubling down on it. You'll see how Napoleon Hill's philosophy, especially applied faith and definite purpose, shaped a man who turned absurdity into art and rejection into a superpower. Because sometimes the only way to win is to look ridiculous long enough to become undeniable. Before the lights, before the laughter, before the world called him brilliant, they called him weird. Jim Carrey was broke, living in a van with his family. His father, once a musician, had taken a job as an accountant, only to be fired later. That moment shattered something in Jim, but it also lit a fire. He realized something brutal. You can fail at what you don't want, so you might as well take a chance on doing what you love. That wasn't inspiration. That was survival. Jim didn't come from connections. He didn't look like a leading man. He didn't speak softly or act normal. He was over the top, loud, explosive, and for most casting agents, that was the problem. He was too much. But here's where the story changes. Jim didn't shrink to fit the mold. He broke the mold to fit himself. While others edited their personality to be accepted, Jim made a decision. He would act like he had already made it. He would live, move, breathe like the person he saw in his mind, not the person the world saw on the outside. That check, the fake one for $10 million, that wasn't a gimmick. That was a tool, a daily reminder of what Napoleon Hill called applied faith, the ability to believe in something so strongly that it pulls your reality forward. Jim Carrey was laughed at, rejected, misunderstood. But every single day, he acted as if the dream was already real. That's not delusion. That's definiteness of purpose. Hill wrote that success begins with a clear, burning desire, backed by unshakable belief and consistent action. Jim embodied all of it. He didn't wait to be confident. He practiced it, even when it hurt, even when no one clapped. And here's the part that most people miss. The confidence you want doesn't come from applause. It comes from moving forward when there's only silence. Jim did stand-up gigs where no one laughed. He was told he'd never be a lead. He got more no's than you can count. But he never let rejection define the next step. He kept showing up with full intensity, even when the stage was cold. Why? Because deep down, he had already decided who he was. That's the mindset that separates the performers from the legends. Not just talent, conviction. So ask yourself this: are you waiting to feel ready? Or are you willing to act like you already are? Because the world doesn't hand out permission slips. You either show up with certainty, or you spend your life shrinking to fit someone else's expectations. Jim didn't wait to be discovered. He stepped into the role before the script was written. You don't become confident by being liked. You become confident by deciding. And Jim Carrey made that decision long before the world said yes to him. He walked into auditions like he already belonged. He walked onto stages like the crowd was already laughing, even when they weren't. He practiced certainty before reward. And that's what most people never do. They wait to feel accepted. They wait for the outside world to say, okay, now you're good enough. But Jim understood what Napoleon Hill made clear. What the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. But here's the part that stings. Believing before you see results is uncomfortable. It feels like you're lying to yourself. It feels like arrogance. That's what makes it powerful. Confidence isn't natural for most people, it's built. And Jim Carrey built it in rejection. He once said, "My focus is to forget the pain of life. Forget the pain, mock the pain, reduce it." That wasn't a joke. That was strategy. Every failed audition, every critic who said he was too expressive, every eye roll from a producer, he didn't fight back. He kept performing. But he wasn't just trying to survive. He was crafting a version of himself that didn't need approval. And that made him dangerous. Because when someone's confidence no longer depends on outcome, they become unstoppable. They move differently. They're not trying to fit in. They're too busy becoming unforgettable. That's what happened with In Living Color. When the sketch show took a chance on Jim, he didn't try to blend in with the other comedians. He exploded. He created characters that were wild, exaggerated, cartoonish, and undeniably him. The world finally caught up to what he already believed. But it wasn't an accident. It was the result of faith in motion. He kept visualizing, kept affirming, kept taking action. That's Napoleon Hill's method. Definite goal, burning desire, faith applied through daily action. Jim had all three. That $10 million check wasn't a dream. It was a plan, written into reality. And 5 years after writing it, he landed Dumb and Dumber. His paycheck? $10 million. But the lesson isn't that the check came true. The lesson is that it only came true because he believed before he had proof. How many dreams have you abandoned because no one applauded? How many ideas have you dismissed because they didn't look realistic? Jim Carrey teaches something different. If you want to become undeniable, you have to be willing to look ridiculous first. Because the world follows the ones who go first, not the ones who wait for permission. Jim Carrey pushed so hard to be who he believed he was, that the world had no choice but to accept it. And when it finally did, everything came at once. The year was 1994. Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, The Mask, Dumb and Dumber. 3 massive box office hits, back to back. In under 12 months, Jim Carrey went from that weird guy with the rubber face to the highest paid comedy actor in Hollywood. But here's what most people miss. When the applause came, he didn't need it anymore. He didn't become confident because of fame. He became famous because he was already confident, even when no one was looking. That's the principle Napoleon Hill called faith applied. It's not hoping, it's not wishing. It's acting as if the thing you want already exists until it does. Jim wrote the check. He visualized the success. He showed up when it was awkward, embarrassing, and lonely. And when it finally happened, it wasn't a shock. It was the echo of everything he had rehearsed in private. So here's a question. How many times do you postpone action, waiting for someone else to tell you it's okay? How often do you delay your ideas, your art, your ambition, because no one has given you the go-ahead? The truth is, the world applauds the people who were already in motion when no one was watching. That's what made Jim Carrey different. When he hit the top, he didn't change his style. He didn't suddenly become respectable. He stayed exaggerated. He stayed unpredictable. He stayed loyal to the character he created years before. And that's the real flex. The world might accept you eventually, but they'll never accept you fully if you were still trying to be someone else. When the claps came, Jim didn't crumble. He accepted them with gratitude and kept creating, not to impress, but to express. Napoleon Hill wrote, "Nothing can resist the will of a person who knows what they want and is determined to get it." Jim proved that with every scene, every performance, every decision to keep showing up as himself, no matter how loud the room got. So here's the pivot. Are you still waiting for applause to give yourself permission to move? Or are you building a version of yourself that already deserves the spotlight? Because when the moment arrives, and it will, what matters isn't the sound of the claps. It's the silence of certainty you've been building inside. With fame secured and the world at his feet, Jim Carrey did something no one expected. He turned the volume down, not by disappearing, but by stopping the chase. He didn't need to be seen anymore. He was finally free to just be. Because here's something only people who were deeply ignored early in life understand. The loudest voice in the room isn't always the strongest. Sometimes the strongest voice is the one that no longer needs to shout. Jim started turning down roles. He slowed his career. He dove into painting, spirituality, philosophy, things that didn't need cameras or claps. And many thought he was giving up. But he wasn't. He was transitioning from someone who once needed to prove himself to someone who no longer did. That's when his journey realigned with Napoleon Hill once again. Hill taught that once a person reaches a certain level of accomplishment, the next evolution is using the mind for a purpose bigger than the ego. Jim became that. He stopped chasing admiration. He started chasing truth. And when he spoke, people listened, not because he was performing, but because his presence now came from clarity, not craving. This is the cycle that most don't understand. First, you need confidence so strong it almost looks like arrogance. Then, you build yourself so completely that you no longer need to prove anything. That's total self-mastery. And here's the beautiful part. Even after everything, he never lost his essence. Still made faces, still confused interviewers, still stayed weird, because the freedom he built was from the inside out. Think about that. Are you still screaming to be noticed? Or are you building something so real that your presence speaks for itself? Because Jim Carrey shows us, true confidence doesn't have to be loud. It can be quiet because it no longer needs to be confirmed. Hill once wrote, "The person who knows what they want and is determined to get it is never ignored for long." Jim proved it. He didn't fake confidence. He created it, then evolved past it into something even more powerful, inner peace. So the real question is, are you still searching for validation? Or are you finally stepping into the version of you that doesn't ask for approval because it doesn't need it anymore? Jim Carrey reached a place most people never get to. He didn't need to be right. He didn't need to be liked. He just needed to be real. That kind of clarity only comes when you've gone through the noise and decided not to live there anymore. At the peak of his fame, he could have kept cashing checks, playing roles, collecting awards, but instead, he started asking deeper questions. Who am I without the performance, without the character, without the claps? And what he discovered was this: true freedom isn't about doing whatever you want. It's about no longer being owned by what other people think you should be. That's the final form of self-confidence. Not look at me, but I don't need to be looked at. Napoleon Hill called this self-directed energy. The ability to point your focus toward what matters, not what distracts. Jim didn't retire from performance. He reclaimed it. He stopped performing for others and started creating for himself. He once said, "Your need for acceptance can make you invisible in this world." Let that sink in, because how often do you shape yourself to be liked? How many times have you watered down your energy just to make others comfortable? Jim Carrey reached a level where he no longer needed applause to feel seen. He could walk into a room and say nothing and still own it. That's because he knew exactly who he was and didn't need that to change based on who was watching. And the irony? Once he stopped needing approval, he became more respected than ever because people sense it, that stillness, that internal gravity, that thing you can't fake. And here's where this connects to you. Real confidence isn't built through compliments. It's built through choosing yourself when no one else does, through believing in your own voice when it sounds different, through showing up without needing applause to justify your movement. Jim never stopped being funny, never stopped being strange. He just stopped needing the world to get it. That's what Napoleon Hill meant by definiteness of purpose. It's not about obsession, it's about direction. A quiet, focused drive that doesn't detour every time someone questions you. So, are you chasing attention or are you chasing alignment? Because Jim Carrey shows us, once you build something unshakable inside, you're free. Free to be weird, free to be wild, free to be silent, and in that freedom, you become undeniable. Let's go back to the start. Before the fame, before the claps, before the world called him a genius, Jim Carrey wrote himself a $10 million check for work he hadn't done yet. For a future no one believed in, for a self that didn't exist except in his own mind. Why? Because he understood something most people never learn. The world will only believe in you once you believe first. Jim Carrey didn't wait to be chosen. He didn't wait to be told he was ready. He acted like he belonged until it became true. That's not arrogance. That's internal leadership. That's what Napoleon Hill meant by faith in action, by definiteness of purpose, by the burning desire to make something real before the world gives you permission. The truth? Most people are terrified to look ridiculous. They're afraid of being laughed at, misunderstood, rejected. So they hide, they delay, they wait to feel ready. But Jim didn't. He went where others were scared to go. He performed when no one clapped. He exaggerated when others tried to fit in. And the moment he stopped asking for validation, the world started giving it. Because the world doesn't follow neediness. It follows conviction. It follows energy. It follows clarity. That's why the check worked. Not because it was magic, but because it aligned his behavior, his vision, and his focus every single day. And when the moment came, he was already prepared, because he had been living the role before he ever booked the job. Now it's your turn. Are you still waiting for someone to say, now you're ready? Are you still seeking permission to be bold? Or are you finally ready to become someone so real, so aligned, so convicted, that the world has no choice but to respond? Because here's the truth, confidence doesn't come from winning. It comes from continuing when you've already lost. From believing when the room is silent, from showing up when you look ridiculous, and doing it anyway. If this video woke something up in you, if it reminded you of your voice, your edge, your vision, then subscribe to Mind's Blacksmith. Because this channel isn't about motivation, it's about transformation. We don't hype, we forge. We don't wait, we move. Drop a comment below. What would you do if you stopped needing approval from anyone? Write it, own it. Let's make that your starting point. Because one day when the claps come, and they will, you won't need them. You'll already know who you are.